我先轉。依家你係主持人，
我轉翻嚟啊嘛。
係啦，
我哋要刪翻佢，定係有佢 back？
唔關事嘅，因為佢哋冇睇到，因為只係睇到冇事。
醫生就飛啦。但我要見到你喎，我又唔見咗你，見到。設為主持人。
你可以靜音嘅。你可以靜音。
但我冇見到我自己可以靜音。設為主持人方面撳你唔得嘅，今日而家我冇得靜音。 OK， 你好，我们还有2分钟时间就开始所以如果你们要听新翻译的，请你再按下边翻译哪个字，按中文你就听到中文的翻译，不然的时候你就会只听到了主会场 Jerry 的哪一个英文的讲解。所以你看到在这个工具键Vicky 工具键下边有一个回忆，这个你按下去有中文英文。你如果按到中文的时候，你就会听到Josephine。OK， 所以如果要听中文的，就在那边设定中文，按下去。如果你在听中文的时候，你听不到英文，因为如果我们中英文2个一起的时候，我们的在网络就会有一个比较大的冲击比较有挑战，就不同平常我们在现场的时候，我们可以同步去做这个的翻译所以这个就有一个的挑战。點樣做錄影冇咗嗰個 function 係咩OK so I want to start the introduction for the Enneagram book. So if you want to listening to the Chinese channel, you need to click the translation on the toolbars, and then you can listen to the Chinese translation. So I really want to acknowledge Jerry, and in Chicago it's 6 a.m. in the early morning. So he's really committed to the Enneagram community. Enneagram community, as well as we know he is one of the founder for IEA, and he's been with the Enneagram community for over 40 years. So we have a lot to learn from him. And tonight we will be talking about this book. We spent like 1.5 years doing translation, verification, and I really want to appreciate the support of the team. 第2張 slide, Francis. So International Enneagram Association, we start at 1994. So we've been around for some time, and we've been promoting Enneagram work, and also we have a collective of Enneagram teachers to support this event. I want to introduce them. Gao Yuan from Shanghai, Apple from Hangzhou, Chen Ziyong from Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Li Jingfen, Beijing, Geng Tao from Yunnan, Pei Yuzheng from Nanjing, Li Xiang from Northern China, Li Bowen 在河南, and also Han Gongyuan from Beijing. So they've been very supportive in promoting the event, and also they have helped to promote the Enneagram community. So we want to share tonight 2 hours, although it's really short time. We want to really hear from Jerry about his insight from a psychological perspective, because in China we have a lot of teacher coming to teach us with a narrative tradition, with Don and Russ Hudson about the level of development and other schools. So I think from a psychological point of view, understanding the personality is one exciting approach and insight for understanding how our coping strategy works. So we want to give the floor to Jerry, and then for people who want to ask questions, you can use the question box, and for people who is checking on the side, you can communicate with individuals or with groups, but we will maintain the silence during this period of time, because we want the live streaming, because there's people also from New York, from Taiwan, from Singapore, also listening into the program via YouTube. So that's why we want to have a better sound quality for everybody who is involved into listening into this program and event. Okay. Josephine, you have to speak up, I think. The volume. 你要俾Jerry 刪細咗我先。So, Jerry, really appreciate your effort. Looking forward to the wonderful 2 hours. Thank you. I'll be back later on. Okay.
All right. Don't go too far. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for getting my book published. It took a lot of work, so thank you very much. This is not quite as nice as being actually in Hong Kong. I enjoyed the conferences I attended there, but here we are here. Just a little bit about myself. As Gloria said, I was one of the first students of the Enneagram in the United States. My teacher had just learned it from Claudio Naranjo, who had just learned it from Oscar Ichazo. So I was in at the very beginning. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. So my background is in psychology, and I also have a Master's of Divinity degree. So I have a background in theology. And I think the Enneagram is a system that has both psychological and spiritual dimensions. So they're both very complementary, I think. I had the honor of being named an honorary founder of the International Enneagram because of the writing that I've done, the teaching, and the research. And I've just been around a long time. So if you're, old enough, you get a prize. So let me talk about some of the psychological dimensions of the Enneagram. I think the Enneagram is very compatible with the psychoanalytic tradition in psychology. So I've written about the Enneagram in Carl Jung and Freud and Alfred Adler and Karen Horney and a man named Harry Stack Sullivan, who's in a more relational psychoanalytic tradition. I think the Enneagram is compatible with behavioral traditions. I gave a talk in Hong Kong about that. And particularly, I think it's very congenial or compatible with cognitive theory, so cognitive psychology. And my book, 9 Lenses, basically brings the cognitive tradition into the Enneagram. I myself happen to be a 5, and so that would explain why I'm talking about the cognitive tradition. So the mind looks for regularities. We look for reoccurring events And then we form beliefs or hypotheses or assumptions about those events. And those assumptions then and beliefs filter everything in through them. So now reality comes through our, what Piaget called schemas. So the Enneagram talks about 9 sets of schemas, or 9 worldviews, ways of looking at the world, or 9 lenses. So let me talk about schemas a little bit. So schemas, or lenses, or filters, are beliefs that we form about ourselves, about the world, about other people. And we learn them very early in life. You know, little infants are already learning, grabbing data, trying to understand it, trying to make sense out of this world that they've suddenly appeared in. And these ways of looking at the world, we then presume or assume that they're true. We take them for granted. So you might think, oh, well, everybody likes me, or nobody likes me, or I'm going to be successful, or I'm going to be a failure. And we then believe that's the way it is. Not that's the way I think it is, but that's the way it is. So, so these early schemas then act as filters or lenses, and now the world comes in through these lenses. And Piaget talks about assimilation. So the world comes in through our schemas, but then there's new data, new information. And so now we have to alter, change, accommodate our schemas to fit the new data. So we do both. We bring information in through the schemas we already have, and we might have to change, alter our beliefs to fit the new information. These schemas are very central to our beliefs about who we are and who other people are, what we're allowed to do with other people. They provide a sense of predictability and certainty. So there's another cognitive theorist, George Kelly, who says we're all little scientists, and we form hypotheses about the world, and then we test them out. So, for example, you form a hypothesis about, well, if I see this, then that will happen. If I see a flash in the sky, then there will be a loud noise, which we call thunder. Or if I see this expression on my mother's face, I know this is going to happen. More thunder. Or we also then form hypotheses, assumptions about our behavior. If I do this, then that will happen. If I'm nice to you, you'll be nice to me. If I call my father a fool, I know what will happen next. And so I don't do that. There's also some beliefs about our own ability to do things. So a belief that I am capable of doing what needs to be done. So these schemas give us a sense we know what's going to happen next. They're comfortable, they're familiar, and usually we like to hold on to our schemas. So we like them. And so there are ways to maintain those schemas. We look for data that confirm our schemas. And there are ways of avoiding data that would disconfirm or disprove our schemas. So we develop a bias. We look for what will prove, confirm our assumptions, and we ignore data that will disconfirm it. So we're not necessarily good scientists because we really like our hypotheses. So you can also think of schemas as being maps. So they're maps of the world. Our mind recreates the world inside. And so the world we live in is the world that we've created through our schemas. I'll talk about paradigms later. That's another word for schemas and lenses. So our maps can be accurate. They can be useful. They help us get around, and they are fairly accurate maps of reality, and they're up to date. Sometimes our maps are distorted. They're based on our early experiences, which may not represent all the world or reality, and so they might be distorting. And they're not so helpful. They can even be defeating. So if you say, well, I'm a failure, I'm ugly, I'm dumb, those are not useful thoughts. And so the Enneagram helps us see what are some useful thoughts, what are some accurate ways to map the world, and what are ways that we might distort the way we look at the world. So let me talk about lenses. So the book is called 9 Lenses on the World, 5 and 4. So there are 9 sets of glasses that we can put on. I have worn glasses since the 7th grade. So I have worn glasses for a long time. I was amazed when I put them on for the first time how clear the writing was on the blackboard. So our lenses help us see clearly, or they might distort what we see. Put somebody else's lenses on and things get very fuzzy and upsetting. Our lenses might be tinted or have a color to them. So if we're wearing gray glasses, the world will look gloomy. If we're wearing rose-colored glasses, the world will look cheery. Sometimes our lenses magnify things, like a magnifying glass, they make them look bigger. So someone might be talking to us, but we hear them yelling at us. We amplify, magnify what we experience, or we minimize things. If we think people don't like us, and then someone does like us, we might say, well, what do you want from me? I don't trust that. And so we minimize information, data that will disprove our theory. So we need to update our lenses. You go to the eye doctor every few years to see how your vision is doing. And we need, and the same with your computer. You have to update your software. Otherwise, it won't work. So the Enneagram actually helps us look at our lenses. Normally, we look at the world through our lenses. We seldom take them off to actually look at them. Oh, this is the way I'm seeing things, but you see things differently. Interesting. So the Enneagram provides like a lens check. It helps us see the schemas that we are looking at the world through. So let's talk about values. I like to start when I talk about the Enneagram with what's important for each type. So rather than what's wrong with each type, what's right with each type, what's good about each type, what do we all have to contribute to each other, to the world, to the group. So I think of values in terms of what's important to us. What do we look forward to? You might think about, well, at the end of the day, what made it a good day? So some people might say, well, I did something really well today. That made it a good day. Or I was able to help somebody today. That was a good day. Or some people might say, I got a lot done today. I accomplished some things today. Other people might say, well, I had a very deep, meaningful conversation with someone today. Or I made a beautiful piece of art today. Other people might say, like myself, oh, I learned something today. Other people might say, I survived the day. I lived through the day. I didn't get hurt today. Or I was able to be loyal, keep my word, do what I said I was going to do. So other people might say, I had fun today. Oh, I learned something new. I had a new experience. Great. And other people might say, well, I was able to help someone who was being bullied. I could stand up for the underdog. I made the world more just today. Other people might say, well, I had a easy day. I didn't get upset. I didn't upset anybody else. I brought about some understanding and peace. So there are different values. And so think about, at the end of the day, what made it a good day. That'll give you a sense of your values. You also might want to put on your tombstone. What would you like on your tombstone? On your that might say something about what's important to you. All right. We tend to be good at what we value. Or maybe we value something that we're good at. So each of the types has some abilities, they have some intuitive gifts, and we have those to contribute to the community. So we actually see things before other people see them, or maybe we see things that other people don't see. And if you've got 9 people in your group or team, then you have a 360-degree view of the world. You could see everything. Other people make up for our own blind spots. So I can see what's in front of me, but I can't see what's behind me. You can see that. That's my blind spot. You can tell me what's there. You could say, oh, what are all those books? And I would say, oh, those are my books. I'll read them someday. All right. So if you value doing things well and fixing things, you like to fix things, make them better, then you tend to look for what needs to be fixed. And if you're looking at us, you don't have to look very much. You can see all the things in us that need to be improved on. So certain types are very improvement experts, make things better. Other people, because they value helping and being in relationship and connecting with people, they're very good at seeing what people need, seeing what people are feeling, because they're looking for that. And you get good at what you're looking for. Sometimes you see what you're looking, see things that you're looking for that aren't there. So some people can see needs in us that we really don't have, but they want us to have. Other people are very good at getting things done. So they know how to set goals. They know how to get people to help them get to their goal. They know what resources to get so they can finish the job. They're very good at that. Other people are very good at sensing people's mood and feelings, because that's important. They want to have a feeling connection to people. They also have a very good aesthetic, artistic sense. They may not be artists, but they are very creative. And it's like they're born with that. Other people want to make a thought connection to people. And so other people who value learning are very good at connecting different ideas, seeing connections. Again, sometimes you may see connections where there aren't any, but this particular type is looking for them all the time. Oh, how's the Enneagram like the Myers-Briggs? How's the Enneagram like the Big Five personality theory? How's the Enneagram like, astrology? So looking for connections. Other types are looking for, because being safe is important to them, they're looking for danger. So they can sense what might go wrong. Other types will sense intuitively what might go right, what's good in the situation. But some types are going to value what can go wrong. Other types are able to make plans. They have long-term visions. While the rest of us may not know what we're going to have for dinner tonight, they know where we're going to be 50 years from now. Hopefully, virus-free. We'll see. Other types who are looking to make the world more just might see injustice where there isn't any, but they're looking for it. They're looking for who has the power. How can I maintain my power? How can I not be pushed around, influenced by other people's power? How can I do my own thing? Other people who value peace and harmony look for how we are all one. So the Enneagram might be talking about 9 different ways of being in the world, but really human beings are very alike. So depending on what you value, you might have a certain vision. What kind of world do you want to make? What are you here for? So if you want to make the world, or if you value goodness, you want to be good, you want to help other people be good and realize all their potentials, then your vision might be, I want to make the world a better place. I want to help people be all that they can be, realize all their potentials. So you might become a teacher or a coach. Other people who value love, it's important to them, want to make the world a more loving place, because love is what it's all about. Other people want to make the world a more efficient place, so it works smoothly and not much time, doesn't take much time to get things done. They're very efficient. Other people want to make the world more beautiful. It's nice. There was a expression about someone who was this type, and it said, well, wherever she was, there was beauty. It's very nice, very lovely. So vision. Other people might want to make the world a more enlightened place. Those who value knowing, knowledge, learning, want to make the world more enlightened. Other types want to make the world safer, more secure. In the United States, just yesterday, the engine of an airplane fell off. And so this particular type would say you need to have people inspecting those planes because it's not safe having planes flying over you and parts of them are falling off. So this particular type is trying to make the world safe and secure so airplanes don't fall on you. Other types want to make the world a more joyful place. Help people have all kinds of experiences. They might become travel agents. Other people want to make the world more just. So there's an equal distribution of resources. Everybody has a right and a responsibility to what they need. And other people's vision might be to make the world more peaceful, more harmonious, a world where everyone gets along. So each of the types, and it's part of our personality that we tend to value some things. And then we have a vision about what kind of world we want to make and live in. And depending on your vision, you might pursue different vocations or careers. So it's not that I think every type can do any kind of job, but some jobs are more easy, more natural, they take less energy. All right. So if everything goes well and we're loved for who we are and accepted for who we are and appreciated for who we are, then there's no reason to be other than who we are. There's no need to change because who we are has been affirmed. And so we can stay ourselves. We can be ourselves. What happens if we are not affirmed for who we are? If our parents or caretakers or teachers, whoever, say, I'll love you if you are this way. So now there are conditions. And you say, oh, I'm not loved just for who I am, but I should think this, or I should feel this, or I should do this, then I'll be okay. So we then start to shape ourselves or distort ourselves to fit other people's expectations of who we should be. And then we start to expect of ourselves, well, I should be that way. Karen Horney talked about idealizations. So the ideal self-image. It's a distorted self-image. It's who I should be, not who I am. So if you made a list for yourself of words that would describe you, what would you say? I am ... I am what? So each of the types have different exaggerated self-images. So one type says, if I want to be loved, I have to be perfect. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of shoulds. So I should be perfect. Another type might say, well, if I'm going to be loved or liked or approved of, then I have to help people. I have to be of service. I have to pay attention to other people's needs and make sure they're met, maybe not so much my own. So I'm good if I'm helpful. Other types might have learned, well, if I'm going to be accepted, then I have to shine. I have to accomplish things. I have to earn that admiration. So I have to work hard. And so this type who is very efficient can become a workaholic. If you exaggerate the good that's in you, it gets out of proportion. So someone who wants to be good can become a perfectionist. Someone who wants to be helpful can become a codependent, smothering person. Other people exaggerate how special they have to be. If I'm like everybody else, I'm nobody. And so I've got to be unique. I've got to be different. I should be special. Other types maybe were rewarded for being quiet or for being thoughtful, studious, educated. And so you might think, well, if I'm going to be liked, I should be wise. And so you need to gather information, gather data. You have to know. And if you don't know, that's very embarrassing. Other types feel that if they're going to be loved, they should do what they're told. They should do their duty. Do what is expected of them. And so they become overly loyal or overly committed to one way of doing things. Other people in their families maybe were rewarded for being happy, for being up, for being optimistic. And so they think, well, I have to be okay. It's not okay to be sad. You have to leave your tears at the door before you come in. It's okay to be happy, not okay to be sad. So other people living in the world might have decided, well, I have to be strong. It's not that I want to be, but I have to be, I should be. And so they tend to exaggerate being assertive. So now they become aggressive. They exaggerate being a good leader. Now they're a bossy, a bully. And so I should be strong. I should not be weak. Okay. Other people maybe learned to get along in their family by being in the background. Don't stand out. The tall grass gets mowed down. So keep your head down. Don't make waves. Don't cause trouble. Be peaceful and be satisfied with what you have. So each of the types goes from I want to do this, I value this, this is what gives me energy and enthusiasm, to I have to do this. This is the way I must be in order to survive, in order to be liked. So we go from wanting to shoulding. This is what I have to do. Now, another thing that happens, and Jung talks about this, polarities. If you exaggerate certain parts of yourself, so it becomes a caricature, big ears, big nose, big mouth, big chin, many chins, never mind. If you exaggerate certain parts of yourself, then you need to minimize other parts. So if I'm this, if I'm good, I'm not bad. If I'm helpful, I'm not selfish. If I'm successful, I'm not a failure. So there are areas that we need to avoid. These are blind spots. You don't see them. If I'm special, I'm not ordinary. If I'm wise, I'm not foolish. I'm not knowing. If I'm loyal, I'm not a traitor. I don't betray people. If I am happy and optimistic, I'm not pessimistic. I'm not depressed. I'm not gloomy. If I'm strong, I'm not weak. And if I am peaceful, then I'm not upset, and I don't upset other people. So there are certain parts of ourselves that we avoid. Or we repress them, we push them down. And so we don't want to see those parts of ourselves. We don't, and we don't want other people to see them either. So our idealization, who I think I am, is the opposite of our avoidance, our blind spot, our polarity, which is who I should not be. So we have some time here. I would say this, that if you repress parts of yourself that you don't like, then you might decide, well, rather than just pushing this part of me into the basement, I'm going to throw it out. And so, luckily, there are 9 receptacles, 9 garbage bins that we can throw our garbage out into, and that would be us. So, if you don't like the imperfect part of you, you take that and you throw it out, and now you find yourself surrounded by imperfect people who are not doing things right, who are not doing things very well. And so you have to fix them. So we kind of take the parts of ourselves that we don't like, put them in other people, and then try to manage our garbage in other people. So instead of fixing me, I'm going to fix you because you're imperfect. You're wrong. I'm right. Or if you want to help people and you value yourself because you are able to help other people and meet their needs, support them, it's not okay to have your own needs. That's not good. You're a helper, but you're not a helpee. You're not allowed to be helped. And so you find yourself surrounded by needy people because you've taken your own needs, thrown them out there, and now you falsely believe in your schema, well, if I help you, then I'm helping me. If I meet your needs, then somehow I'm meeting my own needs. Not true. Okay. If you want to think of yourself as being successful and very efficient, then you don't want to see any parts of you that are ineffective, incompetent, that are in any way at all failing. So you have to take those parts of you and throw them out. But now you're surrounded by a lot of incompetent people. You have a lot of ineffective people on your team. You say, well, where did they come from? Well, they came from you. So now you have to make them like you. You have to coach them. You have to teach them how to keep a Stephen Covey and Franklin, calendar, so you can list all your projects and then get them done by the end of the day. So you have to help people be more efficient and effective. Go make a career out of it. Other people who like to think of themselves as being special, very unique, very sensitive. Any parts of them that might be rude or crude or unrefined or ugly, they have to take those parts and throw them out. And so now these very refined, elegant people are surrounded by a bunch of insensitive people like ourselves. And this particular type, who likes to think of themselves as being special, also feel that they're misunderstood a lot. Why? Because we who are insensitive, who are very crude and rude, how could we possibly understand them? We just don't get them. And so they feel misunderstood and maybe even abandoned. But in fact, they've thrown out the very ordinary parts of themselves onto us. And what they need to do, and we all need to do, is take those parts back. So rather than be critical of those unacceptable parts of ourselves, welcome them back in. So otherwise, we're incomplete because we've taken parts of ourselves, given them away. And so it's good to take those parts of ourselves back. Then we'll be whole again. So get to know your shadow. It's not as scary as you think. Okay. Other people who like to think of themselves as being wise and knowing, take any parts of themselves that don't know and throw them out. And so that particular type is surrounded by idiots, surrounded by fools, surrounded by people who don't know. And so then you have to educate them. You have to teach them. You've got to write a book so they can read it and become wise. Or just don't bother talking to them because they won't understand what you're talking about anyway. Perhaps that's happening now. But luckily, Josephine will make everything clear to you. All right. If you are wanting to be loyal and you want to be faithful, you want to be true to your tradition, then any part of you that might be a betrayer or unfaithful or well, I don't know, someone who breaks the law, you have to take that part of you and throw it out. So now you're surrounded by people who want to break the law, get away with things. You're surrounded by rebels. And so you have to keep your eye on them. You have to put them in jail. You have to make sure that they're not doing anything dangerous. So if you are someone who wants to be happy and joyful and, up, then you have to take any sadness, any kind of gloominess or depression, and you have to get rid of it. So you who are a fun-loving, let's have an experience kind of person are surrounded by a bunch of boring people who never want to leave home, who just want to watch TV. So you got to cheer them up because they're raining on your parade. You have all these balloons and they're popping your balloon. So you need to cheer people up. Why are we so gloomy? If you are a type who values being strong and being your own person, being in charge, then any parts of you that are weak, that might be, I don't know what the Chinese word for wimpy is, someone who's weak, who is afraid, who is embarrassed. So all of those feelings and all those parts of you, you throw out. So now you're surrounded by a bunch of weak, scared people. And now it becomes very easy for you to take charge, because who's going to stop you? It's not us. We're weak. You're strong. So who's going to stop you from taking over? I'm going to run this family. I'll run this company. I'll run the world. You're not going to stop me because you're weak. So it's going to be very hard for this type to bring that back in and be compassionate, be empathic for that scared, weak little boy and girl that's in them. We all are that way. Some types don't like to be that way. They need to make friends with that part of them. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. If you're autonomous and you do everything all by yourself, that's not a good way to be. It's much better to be part of a community. Let other people support you. So eventually dictators get toppled, get taken over. So stay connected to the community. All right. Other people who want to make the world more peaceful and who themselves want to be low key, no drama, no energy, low energy, take their anger and their excitement and their energy and throw it out because it's too much. It upsets them. And so they're surrounded by very agitated, just like Josephine, who's making gestures here. They get agitated, and so they have to calm us down, turn down the energy, lower the lights, take a breath. Not that big a deal. Be calm. So they need to get back in touch with the angry part of them, the part of them that has their own ideas and agenda, and don't throw that part of you out. It's a good part. It's okay. All right. I'm going very fast and I'm running out of ideas here. Let me add this then. Each of the types had some kind of upsetting, disturbing thing happened to them when they were little. It may have been one traumatic experience, or it may have been just a lot of little experiences. So these would be vulnerabilities or sensitivities. So now you can think about, well, what makes me upset? What do I not want to hear people say? Or if you were hurt when you were little, how can you make sure that you're not going to be hurt that way again? So I remember someone who was in the first grade, very beginning of school, they had a new teacher, and the teacher said, class, I want you to draw a person and color that person your favorite color. So she drew a little girl. Her favorite color was orange, and so she drew the little girl orange. Gave her an orange dress, orange hair, and handed her paper in. And the teacher picked out her drawing and said, now class, look at this. Here's someone who drew a girl and made her orange. Has anybody ever seen an orange person? Why would somebody do that? So now this little person is embarrassed in front of the whole class and has to decide, how am I going to deal with this? And so, being a perfectionist, this person decided, well, before I turn anything in from now on, I'm going to make sure I know what the teacher expects. Before I take this job, what are the requirements of this job? Or what exactly do I have to do to get an A in this class, to get a good grade? So you're looking for a list of what are the requirements, what's expected of me. So, or before you hand your work in, you will be 100% more critical of yourself than any teacher or anybody else could possibly be. So you develop a very strong inner critic or superego, and you're very critical of yourself. And then you hand it in after you've revised it 50 times. If you want to, so if when you were little, maybe you were told that you were selfish, or maybe somehow you figured out that if I help people, if I'm mommy's helper or daddy's helper, then I'll be okay. And so you're very sensitive now to being told that you weren't very helpful. I know someone very recently who is an Enneagram teacher. He did a workshop, and the feedback was, you didn't know what we needed, and so you were doing this in your workshop, but we really needed you to do that. So this is what this type does not want to hear. You didn't understand our needs. You didn't meet our needs. This is the worst for that type. Another type maybe learned that they needed to be, what do I want to say? They needed to bring home trophies, prizes, good grades. They needed to accomplish a lot of things, and that would make people happy. So they're going to be very sensitive about failure, very sensitive about particularly if it's a failure in public. So they want to avoid that. That's a very sensitive, touchy spot. None of us want to fail, but for this particular type, failure is just not an option. It's terrible. So you have to call it something else. It's a learning experience. Oh, I see. Or Thomas Edison, the American inventor, said, I just discovered 10,000 ways that something doesn't work. Not a failure. I just found out this is not the way to do it. Then he finally invented the light bulb. Other people are going to be very sensitive to being misunderstood, to being abandoned. That's the worst thing. You know, you're going to leave me behind. You're going to leave me. And so they're very touchy about that. Other types will be very sensitive to being told that you don't you understand. So this is the person who wants to be wise. They don't want to look foolish. So one way to look foolish is to express your feelings. So this type tends to repress their feelings. If you ask them how they feel, They'll tell you how they think. So you've got to don't speak until you know what you're talking about, or you can't be criticized for something you've never said. So another type might be very sensitive to being betrayed. I remember someone who was this type who, when she was young, her father came and said, let's go to the ice cream store. We'll get some ice cream cone or candy. And she said, oh, good. So they got in the car, they went to town, they went past the ice cream store to the dentist office. So the father tricked her, he betrayed her. So now this type is going to be very sensitive about paying attention to what people say. What do you really mean? What do you mean? Let's go to the ice cream store. So they're looking for hidden intentions. They become suspicious. I don't want to be caught off guard. Other types are going to be very sensitive to being bored or being boring. They like excitement. They like new experiences. They like energy. And so for them to be bored is like to be dead. So, they'll change jobs, they'll change partners, they'll change careers, anything to avoid being bored. It's terrible. Or being sad. So you try to soar above whatever's making you sad, run up ahead of it, don't let it catch up to you. So very sensitive to pain and suffering. Another type who wants to be strong, maybe when they were little were bullied, or maybe they were taken advantage of, maybe they were hurt. And so they decided, I'm not going to let this abuse, this hurt continue. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to scare people away. I'm going to develop a strong personality so people won't mess with me. They won't bother me. They won't try to hurt me or take advantage of me because I'm big, I'm strong. Another type is going to be very sensitive to conflict. They like to make the world peaceful. So any kind of conflict is very painful. They're very sensitive to that. Someone who was that type recently said, when there's conflict, it creates too much energy, too much excitement, too much anger. And so, again, they want to avoid conflict, not see it, ignore it. Now, and so we develop defensive strategies to make sure we don't get hurt the way we were when we were little. And so you can think about these 9 Enneagram styles as both ways to express our values, what we like, what we're good at, what's important to us, but they're also defensive strategies to make sure that we don't get hurt. In many ways, those defenses are exaggerations of our good qualities. They're caricatures. They distort it. So many times, people will say, well, just back off a little bit from that defensive strategy. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be helping all the time. You don't have to be working all the time. You don't have to be feeling sensitive all the time. You don't have to be thinking all the time. You don't have to be scanning the environment, looking for danger all the time. It's okay to relax. The universe will not hurt you. It's okay to not have to be up all the time. It's okay to be relaxed, calm. It's not okay. You can back off from having to be strong all the time. You can trust other people. They won't hurt you. And you can back off from being so calm. You can actually have energy. You can actually stand out, say what you want. It's okay. So each of us, can exaggerate the good things that we have. All right. So let me do one other thing. I see that we have a lot of chatting going on. People saying, when will he stop? Soon. So let's talk about paradigms. I have no idea what the Chinese word for paradigm is. I leave that up to Josephine. So it's a worldview. It's a schema. It's a collection of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So Alfred Adler, who was for a while a colleague of Freud, but separated himself out, said that when we're little, we create a worldview. And then we create actually a lifestyle to carry out that worldview. So in the Enneagram, it says a similar kind of thing. So we have 9 worldviews. They're all valid. They're all accurate. They don't distort the world. They might be incomplete, but they're a good way of looking at things. So our schema, our worldview tells us what to look for, what to pay attention to. So basically what's good for us. So when you walk into a room or walk down the street, what are you looking for? What are you paying attention to? Gloria earlier mentioned the narrative tradition, Helen Palmer and David Daniels. And so they talk about habits of attention. Where does our attention habitually go? What are you looking for? Our paradigm, our worldview, also tells us what to look out for, what's bad for us. So either, be wary of this or just ignore it. It's not that important. So maybe we're ignoring some things that would be worth paying attention to. Now, within our own worldview, we are experts. We're really good at what we're seeing, what we're doing. But if you take us out of our worldview and put us into someone else's, then we're just ordinary. And they're the expert, but we're not so sure how to live in their world. So we probably try to get them back into our world. Come to my house, come to my ring. So I'm not comfortable in your world. So the trick is we need to expand our worldview, our paradigm, because there are some problems that our worldview, our paradigm won't solve very well, particularly if our paradigm created the problem in the first place. So if you would like to be in a relationship, but your paradigm says, don't reveal yourself, stay private, don't leave your room, this is probably not a good way to develop relationships. So you might want to get inside another paradigm, another way of looking at things. Learn about these 8 other ways of being in the world. You can think the way they think, feel the way they do, react the way they do, and now you've enlarged what you allow yourself to think, what you allow yourself to feel, what you allow yourself to do. The good thing about the paradigm is it helps us focus our attention. It does help us to survive, but it can also narrow us down. It can constrict us. So if we can appreciate the way 8 other types are in the world, that gives us a much broader array of resources for ourselves. So think about it, there are 9 players on our outer team, and there are 9 players on our inner team. So we've got access to all these ways of seeing things and responding to things. We just need to get in touch with them. And perhaps by imitating other people, that helps us develop that part of ourselves that we may not be using that much. So if you have maybe 4 or 5 players on your inner team that you really like, you use them a lot. But maybe there are other styles, other types that are also on your team that you don't use very much, even though they might really be useful in certain situations. Gloria.
So I think I really enjoy your talk about the circle, about the polarity, because that would be really useful in applications, because a lot of time we are talking about personality per se, but then when you're talking about inner teams, we have different parts. Although we say we embrace different line types, but we always have one basic type that show up. So there is a couple of questions that come up. So yes. How to really see it as the schema versus a style? So how can we make that distinction? Because a schema is more like what we use in psychological terms, but in layman's terms, they were saying, okay, what I see, what I feel, how I experience it. So how we know that it's just the outer reaction, or whether it's the internal foundation structure that shape my worldview. So how to make that distinction?
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I've been talking mostly about the cognitive schemas, ways of thinking about things, but there are also emotional schemas. And so there are, the Enneagram talks about virtues or vices. So there are emotional schemas where love, or where our energy is expressed in a clean, undistorted way, or with the vice, it gets expressed in a distorted way. Different emotions get involved with love, like anger, envy, the avarice, well, the traditional deadly faults. There's also behavioral schemas. So I think if you put them all together with the way we think and feel and do, now you've got a personality style. And I think you're right. We're born with a certain temperament, certain kind of predisposed ways of seeing things and feeling about things and doing things. But the brain is adaptable. We can learn. And so even though we might have an inclination to do things a certain way, we can teach ourselves to do things another way. So I'm right-handed, but I can develop my left hand. You know, especially if I want to pick my ear, it's hard to do it with this hand. So a personality style is a more experiential way of saying. Schema is more theoretical, it's more abstract. When you talk about a personality style, it makes it more concrete, you know, more experiential, not just abstract.
So that is what we are talking about, different level, different entry point into seeing the self. So the $1 million questions come again. is how we frame this personality. Is it inborn, or it is affected by the environment, our parents, things like that, and all our experience.
Yes. All of the above.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. So it's nature. Nature is what we're born with. And then we're born into the world. And then the world starts to shape us. So we're affected by our environment. But it's really the interaction between the two. Actually, our temperament, the child, also shapes, conditions the parents. And so the parents have to adapt to the child's temperament, just like the child's temperament has to adapt to the parents' temperament and rules. Yeah, so it's both. In psychology, there's always like a pendulum, a swing. So, you know, it goes from, well, biology and temperament and nature until all, you know, 75% of what we do is based on what we're born with, our nature. And then the behaviorists come along and say, no, about 99% of us is dependent on our environment, which conditions us and shapes us. And then the interactionists say, well, it's a little bit of both. Now I think psychology is moving back to the biology. It's emphasizing temperament more. So then I'm sure it'll swing back to environment. So, you know, it's like Hegel, the German philosopher. You have the antithesis, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You can apply that to what I've been talking about. You've got your ego, your personality, your shadow. So here's the thesis, here's who I am, here's my shadow, I'm not this. So now you got to figure out, how am I both? Synthesis. How can I be strong and weak? Well, I can be a loving warrior or a peaceful warrior. Or whatever. A wise fool, you would be like a court jester in the Middle Ages who could make fun of the king and not get their head chopped off. So how can you honor both sides, both nature and nurture? So, yeah, I think it's both.
Yeah, I think that is a very good way of seeing it. Is not just about the information, the knowledge, it's also about the applications. And it's really help us to look at more integral part of the personality, because I think in our day-to-day teaching, a lot of time we just think, okay, head, heart, and gut, and 3 types, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, but I think we forgot that we are mixtures of experience, and also we have different level of health, I think, at least how we operate. So the question would be, how can we embrace our circle? Another $1 million question. I think it's not just the how, but I think what would be some of the indicator, some of the approaches. I know that would take like 5 days lectures to talk about it, but any tips or simple highlight about embracing the shadow and also getting more integrated. I think people who are in the Enneagram community were willing to do a lot of personal work, personal growth, and also I think also important is not growing ourselves only, and also growing the people around us to have a community. That is very important. So can you speak to that, how to embrace our shadow?
That's right. In 25 words or less. I have many thoughts happening at the same time. So none of these thoughts are coming out now. Let me think. So the Enneagram, I think, helps us see what the world is that we're living in. And so you begin with awareness. So, okay, I'm allowed to think this. I'm not allowed to think that. I'm allowed to feel this. I can feel happy, but I can't feel sad. Or I can feel angry, but I can't feel loving. Or if you're 5, I can't feel anything. There are certain things you allow yourself to do, and you can't, you don't allow yourself to do. Maybe if you're a certain type, you're not allowed to ask for what you need. You have to hint at it. Whereas other types don't have any trouble asking for what they need. So now you can see, well, there are 8 other ways, 8 other paradigms, 8 other ways of thinking about things, feeling, behaving. If other people can do that, I can do it. And so Albert Bandura, who is a psychologist here in the States, based a lot of his teaching on modeling, imitation. He said little kids learn by imitating their parents, their teachers. So we can imitate 8 other types. We can model ourselves on them. We can ask them, what are you thinking that you can get up in front of a group of 500 people and not be scared? So some people have speaker anxiety. If you're a 3, you don't have any trouble because you're thinking, well, these people are my friends. They want to hear what I have to say. I've got something to say to them. So depending on how you're thinking, that allows you to feel and do certain things that you might not allow yourself to do. So part of the imitation is to ask people who are all these different types, how do you allow yourself to confront people? How do you allow yourself not to be impulsive? How do you allow yourself, if you're an extrovert, to just go up to a stranger and say hello? Or if you're an introvert, how do you allow yourself just to be quiet? How do you do that? I find that hard to do. George Kelly, the cognitive theorist, used to teach high school drama, theater. So one of his therapy suggestions was to write a description of this character that you would like to be, and then play that part. Act as if you were that character. So there's another psychologist from South Africa who talks about acting as if. So act as if you were a strong person. Act as if you were a loving person. Act as if you were a peaceful person. Act as if you were a thoughtful person, whatever. In AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, they have the expression, fake it till you make it. So spend a week being a 1, spend a week being a 2, spend a week being a 3. I did a talk one time, and we were actually trying to illustrate something else. So we had people, we put 9 numbers in a hat, and then you had to pick out a number. So now you are that type. And here's a problem. As that type, how would you deal with this problem? And we thought, well, now this is nice because people are going to learn 9 different ways of solving a problem. But their experience was, oh, I really like that, because as this type, I could allow myself to do things I would never allow myself to do as my own type. So pretend you are this other type. Someone else who works with business talks about a magic cloak. I don't know if businesses would like this, but so you put on this magic cloak, and the cloak allows you to be a certain way. So, your superpowers. Now you can soar around the room like a 7, or you can sit quietly in a corner. Whatever that cloak is that you put on, you now have those magical powers. So put on the cloak of each of these types, and then act as you are that type. So we're not limited so much by the world as we're limited by our own paradigm, our own thoughts, our own beliefs. So if you believe the world is flat, when you come up to the edge of your world, you're going to stop. If you believe the world is round, then you can keep going. So it's all in your head. Thinking makes it so. Change your way of thinking, which then changes your way of feeling, which changes your way of doing. All that is easier said than done. It's a risk to think different things, to feel different things that you're not supposed to feel, to do things you're not supposed to do. But you run the experiment, and then you find out, well, maybe other people don't react the way I'm afraid they're going to react. So think about yourself as a scientist, and you're going to try something new, see what happens. And maybe it's not as bad as you think. Maybe if you ask for what you need, the world will not come to an end. Or maybe if you allow yourself to be weak, you'll find that people actually don't run screaming from the room, but they actually come to support you. It's a nice experience to have.
So like they said, because it's the experimentation really demand us to get out of our own identity of the who I am, have a lot of courage to try things out, not from a place of proving self as right or wrong, but seeing what is and what can be. So I think it's like sometimes we tell people not to say that I am a type 8, I am a type 7. Okay, maybe you have a type 7 style as the dominant coping strategy. So I think it's like getting away from that own labeling, learning it, but at least not really being trapped into the whole box of it.
Yeah.
So yes, continue.
So again, it's kind of the Hegel, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So on the thesis side, yes, we're kind of born with a inclination to be a certain way and, think and feel and do things. It's a thesis. The antithesis is, yeah, but we got 9 other ways of doing things too, or 8 other ways. And so the synthesis is, maybe there's one core organizing part of you, but it's organizing all these 9 parts. So, or it's your conductor of an orchestra. You've got all these instruments in your orchestra that are all parts of you. And then the conductor, that core self, brings in the clarinets, brings in the trumpets, brings in the violins. Or the other metaphor I used is if you shine light into a prism, it breaks up into a spectrum of colors, like that chart I have behind me here. And so, we naturally show off one of those hues, one of those colors, but we've got all the colors within us, all the colors of the rainbow.
So your school, you're talking about all this anagram in a spectrum. So, yeah. But in actual sense, we cannot be saying that we are red plus yellow and then we become orange.
Yes, that's right.
So would there be a direction that you would suggest for people to look at because some school will be talking about, okay, be in the moment, keep aware of your breath. And some people will be saying that, okay, you really listen to your inner voice. So what will be some of the direction, because I know that you are a very experienced counselor also, where you suggest people to start the inquiry for growth?
Well, I suppose most therapists would say you begin with awareness. So I was trained, well, in a lot of different approaches, but Gestalt was one main approach. And Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, talks about awareness. So the clearer you can make your awareness, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I feel, here's what I'm doing. If you don't want to do that, it becomes clear, well, I'm doing this, and so this is what I can, this is something else I can do. Oh, I'm aware that I'm doing this, it's not working. I can do this, and it might work. So begin with awareness and acceptance. That's the acceptance and commitment therapy is a new approach. So just noticing when you're meditating or when you're, living, you develop your inner observer. Fives are good at that. We step back and, notice what we're doing. Then we forget to step back into the life. So develop your observing ego and just notice what's going on. Gurdjieff, who used the Enneagram a little bit, talked about when you walk down the street, just walk, but there's another part of you that's observing, noticing you're walking. So I've been making all these gestures. Now I'm aware of, I'm making these gestures. Like I've just stepped back from myself. And I'm seeing, oh, here's my hand. My hand is not there now. So it's possible to notice what you're thinking, notice what you're feeling, notice what you're doing. Oftentimes we don't do that. We're automatic. We don't pay attention to that. In a way, what a therapist needs to do is there's an interaction going on between you and the client, and you're fully present to interacting with the client. And then there's this other part of you, the third eye, the observing ego, that's noticing, what's happening between me and the client. So there's a part of you that's I don't know, detached is a word, that's more observant. Oftentimes when we are in the trance of our style, Tom Condon talks about trances, we're so caught up in it that we can't step back and see, oh, here's what I'm thinking. When you're paranoid and suspicious, well, of course everyone is against you, and you can't see, well, this is the way I'm looking at things. But no, it's the way it is. Of course, you're all having these terrible thoughts about me now. The observing ego allows you to say, okay, I'm thinking you're having these thoughts about me. Where does that come from in me? So begin with awareness, and then you can think about, okay, I'm here. I'd like to be there. I do this. I would like to do that. And then the behavioral approach comes in. Okay, what do I need to do to change my behavior? I tend to not like behaviorism. I think it's superficial. And then I realized I don't like behaviorism because you actually have to change your behavior. Oh, I'd like to sit around and think about it. What did my mother do to me when I was 2 years old? It made me the way I am, anything to put off actually having to change my behavior, because that creates anxiety. Who likes that? Well, it's called exposure therapy. You have to do the thing that you're afraid of. And if you survive, then you realize, oh, not as bad as I thought. So, okay, so you become aware of what you're allowing yourself to think, feel, and do, which takes a long time. And then that exposure therapy is, okay, I'm not allowed to tell you how I feel about you right now as a 5. Do it. See what happens. Other types have no trouble saying how they feel about you right in the moment. They can do it. All right, try it. So it's called exposure therapy. Think the unthinkable. Well, maybe this isn't true. Maybe it is true. Feel the unfeelable. Allow yourself to feel anger or sadness or embarrassment or fear. You know, whatever you don't allow yourself to feel, as you allow yourself to feel that, the anxiety goes down because nothing terrible happens to you. Or do something. If you're afraid of heights, actually go up to the top of that building. Expose yourself to the very thing that you're afraid of, and gradually your anxiety goes down. If you're afraid of dogs, go to a dog shelter and play with the dogs. You're afraid of kids, go play with kids. If you're afraid of men or women, spend some time with them. And so then your anxiety goes down, and now you can allow yourself to experience more than you did before. So it's kind of a combination of paying attention to your thoughts and your assumptions and your beliefs, paying attention to then what feelings those beliefs call up, and noticing what you allow yourself to do and what you don't allow yourself to do, and then imitate someone who can do what you don't allow yourself to do. There's a Tony Robbins who uses NLP. He does a lot about imitation. So just figure out, well, what does this famous financier do? How are they thinking? What choices did they make? What decisions, what behaviors? And if you can clone them, if you can make yourself just like them, you could be a billionaire too. Now, you might lose yourself in the process, but you'll be rich. So I don't know if that helps or not. So that's kind of an integrative therapy approach. There's, I think, good things. I used to teach models of psychotherapy, and there's good stuff in all of them, you know. And so these days, the more integrative therapy approaches are combining all these different traditions. So, you know, there's a book where someone talks about combining psychoanalysis, behaviorism, and cognitive theory. Pretty interesting. Say some more. What else can I say about how to bring about change?
Yeah, that is a lot of questions, and I kind of simulate them a little bit, because most of the time we're talking about integration and disintegration. What is your thoughts about that? Because I see that your approach is really looking at the inner different parts interaction, the different level of schemas, the cognitive, the emotional, behavioral. So what is your response when people ask you about this pattern of integration? Do you use that in your analysis, or do you see that as more a different approach of looking at the typologies?
I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but I would say, so you mentioned, we have a head, we have a heart, we have a gut. And so certain types prefer their head, other types prefer their heart, other types prefer their gut. And so start with what they're comfortable with. So if you're a head type, you might want to start with, well, let's look at what you're thinking. If you're a heart type, well, let's look at what's happening in your feeling center, what's going on there. Or if you're a gut type, let's take a look at your behavior. There's a, I can't think of his name right now, but multimodal therapy. I'll think of his name in a minute, multimodal therapy. And so he talks about a few more modalities. So there's thinking, there's feeling, there's imagination, there's connection, there's doing, intuition. And his suggestion is that the more these different levels you can intervene on, the better chance you have of bringing about change. But start with the place where people are most familiar. So some people are really very imaginative, so start with their imagination. Other people have trouble imagining things, well, start somewhere else. Maybe start with behavior or bodily feelings. So intervene at the place that the person is most comfortable with, and then you can bring in the other parts of themselves. But I don't think there are any shoulds. Well, if you're a head person, you have to start there. Or if you're a gut person, you have to start with behavior. You know, whatever works. I'm kind of pragmatic. Whatever helps. Try
I
this,
search and find phobiopenesi, talking about multimodal recognition of personality traits.
No, I'm thinking of somebody else. Hold on a minute. Oh, I don't see it now. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, we can come back.
Yes, yes. It's the same idea though, multimodal therapy or head, heart, gut. So intervene, start with where the person lives, where they're most comfortable with, and then bring in the other centers, parts of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a challenging question. Can we change? If it's the schema, it's the temperament, it's the structure, it's the environment that scooped into the different strategy of reacting to the world or protecting ourselves, is our effort of changing fertile one. It's not really fulfilling or is doable. So,
we
have the pessimist question here.
Yes, I see. Well, as a therapist, yes, we would say, of course you can change, but only if you really want to change. If you want to change. There's an old joke, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is one, but only if the light bulb wants to change. So yes, we can change gradually, slowly. Jung would say that the first half of our life, we develop our strengths. You know, again, Jung would say we're born extrovert, introvert, or intuitive, or sensing. The second half of our life, almost automatically, those parts of ourselves that we haven't been paying much attention to, they just naturally kind of come out. So he talks about the individuation, the part of the psyche, the self, that wants to integrate all these different parts of ourselves. So like it happens naturally. The other thing, you know, this is a dumb example, but I'm right-handed. I was born right-handed. If I do surgery on you, you want to hope to God I use my right hand because it's a lot more delicate than my left hand. On the other hand, if I play piano, I need to develop my left hand, right? And so even though I'm kind of wired to be one way, I can also skill out, practice, develop those parts of me that weren't necessarily pre-wired. So I can create new connections in my giant brain. I can make new connections with those neurons. And so I can start to be able to do things with my left hand, not quite as well, but a little bit better. So it's kind of comparable to my right hand. So it's possible because, I mean, this is a theory because we have all 9 capacities within us. So it's possible to develop all 9. And if Jung is right, maybe, as you grow older, parts of yourself that you didn't pay attention to or didn't develop, maybe now you say, oh, I would like to develop that part of me. I think it's easier to learn it when you're young. It's easier to learn languages. It's easier to learn musical instruments. It's easier to learn a lot of things. But it is possible to teach an old dog new tricks. Even though you're old, you can learn something new. So do we have any other questions coming in?
So some question could be a little bit more specific about the types. So I think it's very difficult for us, especially people sending in as anonymous and ask us what type are they and how can they change. So I think we will not be answering those type of questions, but more like an approach from a psychological point of view. How you see the offering of psychological approaches add to the Enneagram insights, because I think there is a lot of different theories and people like your book, but then the first comment they have is, oh, it's too thick, too difficult. So I think there's nothing easy, simple about Enneagram, is because it's not about Enneagram, it's about us and about the inner workings. So we try to do it as simple as possible, but there's always running up against our own limited knowledge, our own interpretation about what's right or wrong, what's good or not good. So I think what would be your suggestion when people looking into the different chapters, into the different types, what would be some of the things that they should be aware of, should be more sensitive about?
Well, yes, the book is very thick, but it depends on who's writing the book. So I'm a 5, and so I have to leave. I can't leave anything out. I have to say everything that there is to say. And you could say, you don't have to say everything. Yes, I do. So I have a thinner book. That's the the undergraduate level. This is the graduate book. Actually, it's not that technical. I wrote it so for everybody, but there is a lot to the Enneagram. And so you can get a superficial knowledge, but there really is a lot. There is a lot to it. It's why I like it. It creates a really nice framework to hang all these other parts of the personality puzzle on, and so some theories of Freud and Karen Horney and Carl Jung fit nicely with the Enneagram. So I think it's very compatible with a lot of different psychological theories. So I suppose it depends on how serious you are about personal growth. Are you willing to be with yourself and learn more about yourself? It's helpful to go to an Enneagram teacher or a counselor who might use Enneagram theory in their practice to help you understand yourself better. And then you gradually learn more about it. Or, there's different workshops that people offer. So the levels of development, or the inner critic, or the subtypes. I haven't even talked about subtypes. That's a whole day in itself, talking about the subtypes. So I don't know. I suppose, you can drink wine and enjoy wine, and you know the difference between white wine and red wine. But if you want to become a wine connoisseur or an expert, then you go to a wine tasting class, or you spend a lot of time reading about wines, sampling wines. You become more sophisticated in your appreciation of wine. The same with the Enneagram or personality theories. You can know a little bit about them, or if you want to become more proficient or more knowledgeable or more expert at it, then you can read more, go to more workshops. We're going to, we have, I think, 10 modules coming up. So people who want to learn more about the Enneagram can tune into these modules, which will expand on all the things I talked about today. Or you're having an IEA China conference, right? So there'll be different people presenting on different aspects, different dimensions of the Enneagram. It's just a very rich, fascinating system. A lot to learn.
Yeah, I think it's also the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know.
That's right.
We think that we know everything. That would be the danger of it. And then we'll be going into a polarity of, okay, if you're saying that fear is not good, then I'll go and jump off the mountain. So I think that is not what we are saying.
No,
but people would like to interpret things as simple as that would be challenging in learning. I think then they will be in this polarity conversation. So I think I really like the idea of embracing the diversity and also seeing the different components of our personality. And it's really a lot to digest, and I learned a lot to learn. And I think, I know maybe one final question, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah. So one question is about, I think we kind of different people stumble on the journey of Enneagram. So how you really start your journey with Enneagram, and what do you think that is the greatest gift that you find during these years of learning about the self?
Well, I'll start with that. I mean, I think the greatest gift is you get to know yourself, but and probably even more important, then you become compassionate towards yourself, or more empathic, more accepting of yourself. That's really a gift. You're able to hear yourself, see yourself, and connect with other people. So now you help I think the Enneagram helps you understand where other people are coming from. So they're not threatening just because they're different, but that's interesting. Tell me more about how you think about things. How do you see things? What do you like to do? And maybe I'd like to do that too. So it helps, I think, it helps our relationships. Again, where would you want to start? Start where you're comfortable. If you're a visual person, then you might want to start by reading. If you're an audio person, you might want to start by going to a workshop and hearing, listening. If you're a doing kind of person, kinesthetic, again, a workshop, but where you interact with people or where you actually try new behaviors. So again, start with where your strength is. I think, so there's a lot on the internet. When I first learned the Enneagram, there was nothing written. It was all passed on from oral tradition. Now, there are just hundreds of books. There are all kinds of websites. There are Enneagram tests. Mine's the best, of course, but there are many Enneagram tests. So maybe begin with reading, but I think it's really helpful to go to workshops where they're actually all the 9 types are there. And it's very rich experience to hear from them. What is it like to be in the world that you are? So when I first learned the Enneagram, it was over 2 semesters. So it was like 6-month course. And during that time, we could talk to other people in the class and say, you find a 4 and say, well, what is that like to feel like abandoned, Or if you're a 2, well, say some more about what's not okay about expressing your needs. So you really learn from the person who is that type, who is in the world that way. It makes it much more experiential, more real. Even though as a 5, I like to read and I value intellectual knowledge, it's not the same as actually being with someone and hearing from them. What's it like to be that way? I mean, that's part of the narrative tradition, Helen Palmer and David Daniels. Most of their teaching is through panels, through groups, listening to people who are that type. So I would kind of encourage going to workshops. Now, and you have to remember that the workshop presenter is presenting the Enneagram from their point of view. So I've been talking this morning and you're getting my point of view, my take, my understanding of the Enneagram. Someone else might have a little different understanding. So you might want to stay open to, okay, that's what this person thinks. Let me hear what this person thinks. And like everything else, there are a lot of different ways of thinking about the Enneagram, of presenting it. So allow yourself to get a more integrated view. I realize I'm now promoting the Enneagram community. Go out and spend your money, take all these workshops, give up the rest of your life, just go to workshops. Yeah, that's what I would say. I'm just kind of, I think it's important to go to a workshop where you see how all the pieces of the Enneagram puzzle fit together. Or if you come to this 10 module program that you're going to offer that I'm going to be part of, it's another way of learning the Enneagram.
Yes, thank you. Very well said. So I want to share some of the wrap up also.
Yeah.
So I'll be doing it in Mandarin, my Hong Kong Mandarin.
All right.
接下来我会用我的香港普通话作为一个环节去讲的几个 OK。 Jerry.
Yes.
You go to English channel so that you can listen to the translation by Josephine.
Great.
The bottom line, you go. Okay. So just now, 刚才 Jerry 已经提到，我们在谈有一个可以在10周的一个培训，但因为现在还是不可以去方便从美国来，可能也是一个线上的一个课，但我们知道他在芝加哥，所以他现在是6点到8点早上，我们是8点到10点晚上，所以我们在想一个可行的时间或者可行的一个日期，所以我们这些孩子跟其他的老师在商议这个部分，所以有兴趣的跟你的老师去做连接因此我们知道有这个机会跟Jerry 在更深入的去学习关于在这一个心理学的一个角度去做这个事情，这个是第一。他们说没有新音哦。我应该转到中文去吗？喂，有没有声音？我已经转到中文去了。OK， 那好。所以next one please。如果你要听英文呢，你要转为中文，不是我现在在中文渠道OK。不晓得了。所以接下来有这个5月29到30号，我们就今年国际大会第7届就会举行。这一次我们会分开几个地区举行，一个是在上海，一个在北京，一个在哪个地方？成都3个地方，所以留意接下来的一个咨询，因为这一个又有大会可以见面了所以这一次是我们过了一段时间都做了的一个活动这一次非常感谢有几个人的很在背后的支持，除了前面刚才讲的一些老师，我想感谢的是这个的钟群，因为他做了很多的前期或者刚好在群里边，他也非常努力去帮忙解决很多的问题。还有就是 Francis 这个我们的技术的支持我们从技术支持从前天晚上我们呢搞了很多不同的尝试，才可以让今天晚上顺利的去进行所以感谢他们的支持。还有就是我们如果你已经买了这本书就好了，你就可以开始去看如果看了有问题，可以在群里边也开始比较具体去提问，因为如果你问的一些问题比较广泛，我们就难去回答但如果一些具体的问题的时候，我觉得这个会让我们更深入的去学习，是一个好事。所以当然如果你没有这本书的时候，麻烦你可以在这里 scan 叫扫描这一个的订购的号，这个是中群的微信号，然后如果你买10本或者以上，我们就会包邮以后如果你想知道我们的活动的请你扫下边这一个的活动码。所以今天晚上非常感谢你用了2个小时在这里跟我们一起去做这个的分享，也提了有很多非常有价值有方向性的一些问题。当然有一些比较个人的问题，我们这一次没有可以完全的可以去回答得到因为时间比较紧迫 但是我们一定后会有期哈，我们会见到对方，所以Francis， 我们可不可以 unmute everybody to say goodbye？ 所有人So we are trying to unmute everybody so that we can say goodbye. So that is still 400 something. There's close to 500 people around here. Okay. 我只可以做全體靜音喎，允許是所以如果你们想讲再见的时候，你现在我们解除了这一个静音的部分所以你们可以说再见，跟所有人我做咗啦，你 take 個 slide out。所以 thank you for Jerry's sharing, wonderful sharing, and also thank you for Josephine's excellent translation, and thank you for everybody's participation. Thank you. Bye bye, bye bye. 谢谢，再见。Yeah. A short debriefing would be good. So that's good.
Very nice. People are all saying thanks. That's good.
Mày off 咗嚟嗌佢嗌，唔係